Greetings, experts. Welcome back to Disenthrall. I will be Patrick Smith. Today, I want to share a clip from a talk with you guys from the three guys on screen. Now, some of you will have noticed already that the three people on the screen from left to right are Matt Dillahunty, Sam Harris, and Richard Dawkins. Richard Dawkins is, of course, an infamous asshole atheist. Sam Harris, some of you are probably thinking to yourself, I don't really care to hear what he has to say about anything. He is a completely ideologically captured leftist, so much so that he quit Twitter. Matt Dillahunty is also ideologically captured by the left and is quite obnoxious on Twitter. He's hard to follow. But for those people thinking those things, ask yourself, are you right about everything? Are you sure you're 100% right about everything that you think you know? Think about thinking about you from somebody else's perspective. Some of the people that are thinking about you are going to say, "Oh man, that guy's wrong. I don't want to hear about anything about what he has to say. He's wrong about XYZ." Now, those people are going to be completely closed off and blind to and hearing anything from you that you're right about, because they are looking at one area in which you're wrong, or that you're not intelligent in, or haven't thought deeply enough about, and they're going to use that as an excuse to disregard anything else that you have to say. The other side of the three people on stage is that, for example, Richard Dawkins, really, really intelligent on certain areas of biology. Sam Harris, super sharp thinker, thought a lot about free will. He's even tried to, come up with his own moral framework, which of course I have issues with, but that's not the point of this video. And Matt Dillahunty, if you've been watching me for any amount of time, you will have certainly heard me say, I want to believe as many true things as I can and as few false things as I can. That saying is not me coming up with something that sounds really wise. That's me quoting Matt Dillahunty, the guy on the left, one of the best critical thinkers on the planet. When he's talking about religion and standards of reason and evidence and what we believe and what we reject and what we need to hold ourselves to in terms of standards for what we believe, I can't recommend just about any human on the planet more than Matt Dillahunty. Is he absolutely difficult to follow on Twitter? Is he absolutely wrong on a lot of stuff related to politics? Yes. We have to, if we want to believe as many true things as possible, we can't just expose ourselves only to things that we already agree with. You're just going to be blind to everything that you're wrong on that way. So that was, okay, rant over for the people that are already wanting to click off this video because of the people on the screen.
So before we started, we were sitting down in one of the dressing rooms and we were having a conversation about, communicating science and reason and fixing issues. And one of the things that popped up that I thought we might start with, the internet seems to have given power to people, which is a good thing, I would say, and power to ideas and the opportunity to share ideas. None of us can become an expert in everything. You just don't have the time or the bandwidth. So how do we deal with the issue of trying to figure out which experts, what criteria should people use to figure out which experts are worth listening to in an age where everyone has been empowered to become their own expert and just become science deniers or fact deniers?
I want to point out where I think he's wrong in a small way, which is that the internet has empowered us to be our own experts. First of all, we've always been our own experts for hundreds of years, thousands of years. The only person that can be the expert on you is you. I am, and even when we're choosing what experts to follow, we're still doing so as the expert on ourselves. Whether or not we're wrong is up for debate, but we are not becoming experts. We are already the only people that can be the expert, that can pick the experts that we follow or choose to go our own route and try and grow knowledge in a field. Just wanted to make that little point. I think it's very powerful to realize that even when you're following experts, you are still being the expert of yourself. You're still leading yourself in that way.
Alternative fact deniers.
If anything, the internet has just empowered us with the ability to gain a lot more knowledge a lot faster. But it's also, as they're going to discuss, for the people that aren't aware of it, It's given us the ability to follow long lines of terrible reasoning to poor conclusions because we're not trained in the fields that we're looking for advice on.
Richard, you've been at this longer. I'll let you start this.
It's a really difficult problem. In science, we have peer review, that kind of thing. We have methods in place for not respecting authority necessarily, but we know that an article that's written in a reputable scientific journal has been peer reviewed. We know that the findings will be, if they're important, if they're controversial, they will be replicated, and if they're not repeated, it'll be matter for suspicion. No scientist has the knowledge to understand all other science. I mean, reading even a journal like Nature or Science, I can read the biological papers, some of them. I can't read the physics papers. So you have to rely on authority to some extent, and it's a very difficult problem because we pay lip service to the idea that we don't actually respect authority just because it is authority, just because it's Professor so-and-so, Professor somebody something who has FRS and so on. So it is a difficult problem, and
I admire the attitude, and I've tried to adopt it. I would suggest everybody out there does the same. The sort of lack of ego about one's breadth of knowledge, the humility, it's not even humility, it's the self-awareness to realize how little you know. Like, I know a whole lot about a very little number of topics, a very small number of topics. I'm an expert in a very small number of things. Those things that I'm an expert in, I typically speak very loudly and confidently about, as I should. And the humility part, the self-awareness part, is on everything else, I speak a lot less confidently, and I recognize that I'm not trained in the areas. I'm probably wrong in most of the things I believe, and I'm very careful about my beliefs, about believing things in areas I'm not trained in. That's a really, really important bit of self-awareness that I wish more people would have, and I'm still working to have. The other thing is, of course, I think in many scientists' minds, there's a large overconfidence in peer-reviewed papers. I'm glad that he mentioned the replication. You have to be able to duplicate the results of a paper before you should have much confidence in the things that it says. And of course, we're all familiar, well, many of us are familiar with the replication crisis, which is when people go back and they try and replicate the results in these papers. The percentage of them that stand up to that is not so good. That said, what I see people missing a lot in liberty circles is the other side of that. It's still the best system that we have available to us for finding things that are true and not true. It's still the best system we have. In fact, it's probably the only system that produces reliable results to any degree. And both things can be true, and both things need to be understood.
when I try to understand physics, I have to some extent, obviously, rely on authority. As you say, Matt, the internet raises problems that everybody has a voice. And fortunately, not everybody has quite the same reach as everybody else, but nevertheless, it is a problem, and we get politicians telling us things like, you are the experts now. Well, I'm not an expert on most things, and nor are you, and nor are you. Nobody's an expert on everything. And so it is a difficult stage we're in, where people are being treated as though all opinions are equally valid.
Yeah, it actually strikes me as a fairly subtle and difficult to communicate point that in science and in intellectual life generally, we don't rely on authority, except we do up until the moment we repudiate authority. I mean, you have to be competent to the conversation in order to completely subvert the status quo. And so
I don't think you have to be competent to the subject at hand. Like, I think of it like a big bell curve, right? Let's see if I can get this on here. So like out at the sides of the bell curve, you have the line is very close to zero, and then it grows into a bell in the center. And if we think of the verticality of that graph, it's the percent chance that a person on that graph is correct about something. And the center of the graph are the people that have spent the most time in their life studying and improving their knowledge and understanding of the topic at hand. The people on the outsides, very little training. The people in the middle, most of the training. The people on the outsides, the line is almost zero. The chance that the people on the outside of that graph are going to be able to revolutionize or upend the space of knowledge or the subject at hand is vanishingly small, but not impossible. And in fact, the criticisms from the outsides of that bell graph, most of them are trash. Most of them are a waste of time to spend your time listening to, but they're also important because even challenges that are wildly wrong and ignorant from outside the center of that bell are going to make the people in the bell think. And if the people in the bell never respond to the wrong people outside, then just like I was just talking about, they're going to be blind to things that they don't know. The chance that the people in the middle of the graph are going to revolutionize their field is obviously much more. And so if we as humans, being our own self-experts, are looking at the field of people in, I don't know, let's go with medical science, and we pick someone to follow that is on the far extents, on the far outside of that bell curve, to trust with our beliefs on medical science, for example, the chance that we're going to be following someone that is wrong is extremely high. When we pick somebody in the center of that graph, we at least have a much better chance that the person we're following is going to be right. Can the people in the center be wrong? Of course, it happens all the time. Can the people on the outsides of the graph be right? Sometimes, rarely, but yes. What is the appropriate response? What's the appropriate position to put yourself on that graph? That's, again, you're your own expert. You've got to make that determination, and you have to live with the results and the consequences of that decision. You are your own expert. That's my point.
It's clear, it's true that science advances by discovering that the authorities were wrong, at least on important marginal points, and sometimes just wrong wholesale. But just as Richard says, it's impossible to have the totality of human knowledge self-authenticated, and the only reason why we're confident that anything is the way it is because we are content to rely on authorities most of the time, and the reason why that faith, to use a loaded word, is valid is because these authorities are functioning in a culture that is, in the best case, and science really is the best case here, continually purifying itself of error, and it's not being driven by ideology, and it's not being.
This is why it's also important to listen to people that you disagree with, because when they're wrong, you can still learn from it. And in this case, we can learn that there is a blind spot that a lot of people have, most people. There's a couple blind spots on the stage right now, actually, that would lead them to believe that science operates absent ideological drivers. The first blind spot, obviously, is statism. They all believe in the just authority of governments to control, rule the people in the area and fund the science going on, which, of course, it gives them a blind spot to biases in science and ideological drivers in science that would produce false data, cause them to believe false things. Second blind spot is both the people on stage are ideologically left. And so when the science and the scientific studies and data, and I think a lot of science, I won't say, I could probably even feel safe in saying that most scientists are lefties, which gives them a blind spot to thinking that the science that they're involved in and the data that they're producing is not in some way ideologically biased. So when we're listening to these people make statements like science is not ideologically driven, we can say, okay, well, here's a way in which I need to be on guard for my own biases. That's what I'm saying. We learn, what are my biases? What are the things that might give me blind spots in the information that I produce and tell other people, as well as the things that I believe, or leave me blind to believing false things in these areas? For example, anarchists watching this channel, if you if you quickly reject anything, let's say that, like if somebody gives you a report or tells you about something good the government did, I think most anarchists' first response is to sort of reject that conversation out of pocket because it goes against our inherent bias, our built-in bias that the government does nothing good. The government is wholly bad. I don't want to digress into a conversation on that, but you get the idea. There is a potential for a blind spot that might cause us to believe something that's false.
Channeled by accidents of birth. You don't have a Japanese science and an American science, and with nationalism getting in the way. And so there's a process that.
That little clip didn't age well from Sam, did it? Considering what we've just been through with the both ideologically and state captured science that happens in China. I think, again, this is in the blind spot. We have ideological and governmental capture of the science in a specific area. It operates differently there. Certain conclusions and data are censored. Some of it are not. Some things are allowed. Some things are not. It's different. There are differences caused by biases, and we need to be aware of those so that we are not in danger of believing as many false things.
That we rely on, and both things are true. We rely on authority and we don't.
So I'm fond of pointing out that, I don't have faith. I won't use the word to describe this because I think what I have is a confidence level of trust that is, to borrow from Hume, proportional to the evidence that supports it. And there are people who would just say, well, you're not only are you picking and choosing your experts, but you might be picking and choosing the evidence you want. Is it the case that as science is the single most consistently reliable tool that we have for discovering things about reality, but we've taught people about the scientific method, which is an inaccurate way of looking at it because there are multiple methods, and we realize that the way we get to new information is by challenging and overthrowing the existing information. And so you get the people who are like, oh, you laugh at me now, but they laughed at Newton, or they laughed at, Have we constructed a system inadvertently where we're going to be constantly fighting this battle, and it's just amplified by our current access to massive amounts of opinions and information?
Well, it's amplified, and also the capacity to detect error is also amplified. This is just the dual effect of the internet, which half of which is perverse. That is, if you want to remain a slave to confirmation bias, you can forever, apparently, on the internet. But if you actually want to discover if you're mistaken, you can also do that pretty quickly.
I'm not sure that is fully an internet thing. That might just be a human thing. We are subconsciously even constantly disregarding information that goes against our beliefs. Accidentally. We don't even know we're doing it. It's sort of built into, it's a built-in flaw in some regards of the human species brains and how they work. The internet certainly provides us a much deeper ocean of things to go digging through. And it's certainly possible that if you have a bias or are looking to find information that confirms your belief, the internet will provide that until you see nothing else. And the algorithms in place and most of the social media sites in general are going to key in on what you believe, and they're going to feed you more of what you want to see. Why are they doing that? Is it because they're nefarious and manipulative? I mean, maybe some of them to some degree, but also it's what humans subconsciously want. If social media fed you stuff that you didn't want to see all the time, would you go to their sites anymore or as often? No. They're giving you what you want to see because most people don't think about this stuff. Hopefully this audience and the people watching this are going to start thinking about this stuff, and they're going to start realizing actively that the internet is going to give you what you want, not what you need most of the time. And if we turn our brains off and just become another blind sheep user of the internet and of social media, we're going to be in danger of believing more false things. And the way to go looking, the ocean is just as deep for things that will contradict the things that you believe are true. But you have to go looking for that more. You have to expend effort finding why you're wrong, because oftentimes it won't be served up to you like you would think it would be, or like you might tell yourself you wanted. But if you don't go looking, you're not going to get it. All right. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Stay rational, friends.